Hi, everybody. I'm Brittany Lewis, a breaking news reporter here at Forbes. Joining me now is Brittany Martinez, a Republican strategist. Brittany, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
A new poll is out, and it isn't good news for Donald Trump. The Cook Political Report shows Vice President Harris either winning or tied with the former president in all but one battleground states. And obviously, this is a big shift in the election, tied from 3 weeks ago when Donald Trump was dominating Joe Biden. So what are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point that you bring up because you're right. We're kind of flip-flopped now. When it was Biden versus Trump, I think Trump was up in all but two states at some point towards the end there. And now we see the opposite happening. And, anyone you speak to will tell you the only poll that matters is the one on election day. Of course, that's true. When you're 2.5 months out, it's probably not a great feeling and place to be for the Trump campaign. And so I'm sure that they are trying to figure out how do we reassess the situation and move forward? And I mean, that's pretty evident. They're bringing in some of the old campaign folks, Corey Lewandowski, for one, in addition to some other ones. And so I think they're trying to figure out how do we redo what we've done in the past. And I think that's a signal that they're bringing other folks back in.
I am curious because, as you said, there is this flip-flop where Trump and Republicans seem to be on offense just a month ago, and now it's almost defense. The polls are very close, obviously, but
Right.
He is a little bit behind. Do you think it's because of the way Donald Trump is campaigning, or do you think it's because there's the new contender, Kamala Harris?
I think it's a combination of both. I know that folks, I'm sure, will say it's a honeymoon period. It's only been a few weeks. She's young. She's a woman. She brings something to the party and to this election that we haven't really seen before. But at the same time, when you talk about the former president and his campaign strategy, my point would be, what is the strategy? What strategy? Because his strategy seems to be saying whatever comes to his mind, and I don't think that's particularly helpful to him.
That was my next question. I mean, what is the strategy? Because ever since, if we remember 3 weeks ago, which does seem like a lifetime ago, it was the RNC, and there was this air of enthusiasm in the Republican Party. Then just 2 days later, Biden dropped out, and that all changed. So what is Trump's campaign strategy, and what should he be doing going forward?
I wish I could tell you. I'm sure they don't really know either. And I am a political operative, right? So I've been the one behind the scenes working with folks. And so I've definitely been in a position where I try to give my boss the best advice, and he or she, that principal, decides to move forward their own way because they are the boss. So I think that's probably a lot of what's going on. And to be honest, I as a man who loves his television, he's always talking about the polls and the crowd sizes and, even AI potentially crowd sizes, which is untrue. I think he sees all the attention she's getting and is sort of starting to spiral a little bit.
To your point, he's bringing up crowd sizes. He questioned Vice President Kamala Harris's race. And this is very different than when he survived the assassination attempt. And during the RNC, there was this message of unity. So You're an operative here. Let's say you were advising him. What would you say needs to come out of his mouth between now and Election Day?
I would tell him to try to stick to the script as much as possible. And I don't mean just a teleprompter. I mean, like, whatever the campaign talking points are. I think there's obviously a case for Republicans to make here. The economy, for number one. I know that there was just that Financial Times poll that just came out that has Harris above Trump, 42 to 41. But generally speaking, Republicans are usually, the party that's good on the economy, right? And reminding folks, like, no, the highest inflation in over 40 years under the under the Biden administration. And it's not just Biden, it's a Biden-Harris administration. All of the failures of that administration, you can absolutely point towards Harris as well. And I think that's why you've seen her sort of start to stray away from some of the Biden messaging, especially when it comes to the economy, and try to pave her own path. And so, she's made that pivot, which I think has been a successful one, and is probably why now she's doing so well in the polls. I think Trump can take that as an example of what to do too, and listen to staff, and perhaps not do like hour press conferences and with Elon Musk and be on X for an hour and just do that whole thing. I don't think that's helpful to him.
You did mention a name earlier in this conversation that's a blast from the past, and the past being 2016, and that's Corey Lewandowski. And that news broke today that he is back on the campaign reportedly. What does that indicate to you as the future of Trump's campaign?
Yeah, I think that just shows, again, how sort of I've mentioned, I think that Trump is flailing right now and is trying to figure out how do we repeat what we've already done in the past, who were the heavy hitters back then, and trying to lean on those folks to come in and sort of save the campaign and be able to move it forward in a positive direction. People have a tendency to sort of go back to things they're familiar with, especially in those times of high intensity and stress. So it's not surprising to me that he would go back and rely on some of the folks that he trusts. But I think that shows that they are trying to reconfigure this campaign moving forward.
Are you concerned at all with Trump currently trailing a little bit in the polls right now? His campaign, as you said, flailing a bit as of now, just a few months out of Election Day. Are you concerned that this is going to affect Republican races down ballot?
I think it should always be a concern. People tend to vote down ticket, and that's not always the case, but that is generally kind of what happens, especially during a presidential year. People come out more in presidential years because they're excited to vote for that ticket. So, absolutely. I think that, though, coming from a place where I'm speaking to a lot of folks on the ground and the grassroots and Republicans who are dissatisfied with Trump, I think a lot of them are still going to vote down ballot for the rest of Republicans, all the way down, maybe not for Trump himself. But I don't think we have a strong ticket at the top. And Nikki Haley the other day, she did an interview with Fox News where she said, Republicans, you got to stop whining. You got to start focusing on the issues. And when you have a candidate who is not being disciplined in that way, I think that sort of encourages folks on the rest of the down ballot to, feed into those talking points, when in reality, that's not going to be helpful to our cause.
And when you focus on the issues, the top issues facing voters are the economy. I was listening to a podcast today, and a voter was saying, because of the rising grocery price or the grocery store costs, potato chips are now a luxury item for me. So do you think if Donald Trump pivots, starts talking about the economy, starts talking about immigration, starts attaching what people perceived as President Biden's failures to Vice President Kamala Harris, do you think that his ticket specifically can win over more moderate voters, maybe disenfranchised Democrats even, and undecided independents?
I think that's the only way that he can get those voters, if he starts talking about the issues, because a lot of the disenfranchised voters, the moderates in the middle, even in disenfranchised Democrats, right, who might say, like, Biden hasn't done the best job. I maybe don't like Trump as much, but I feel like neither option is good and they're up for grabs. When he talks about the AI and the crowd sizes and questions Harris's race and all of those things, those are the things that people do not like about him. And if he's able to focus on the issues, that might be how he's able to get those voters. But I do think it's probably going to be the only way that he's able to bring those voters back home or into the big tent Republican Party, which we're supposed to be. But I don't think we've been recently, unfortunately.
Historically, it's been said that a vice presidential candidate can only hurt you and not help you. J.D. Vance has had a bit of a bumpy road since Donald Trump announced him just 3-ish weeks ago. Do you think he's a factor in Trump, what you're saying, flailing in the polls?
Oh, I think they're definitely having some buyer's remorse, I'll be honest with you. I don't know if the senator has affected the polling too much, but I also don't think it's helpful at all when, you've called women who are single cat ladies, and he said weird comments about his mother-in-law, and then especially the cat lady comment, I'll just get back to that in a second. As I see my cat over here on the couch, he not only, you could apologize. You're allowed to have said something kind of crass and been like, you know what, I was trying to be funny. But he didn't really do that. He doubled down and really leaned into that. And again, when we're talking about those middle voters, I don't think that's helpful. So though I don't necessarily think he's helped Trump take a hit in the polls, it is incredible timing with, Harris and all of that. But I do think that he has been a little bit of a complex character to bring into the 2024 election fold, for sure.
And women that I've talked to about those comments, specifically Democrats and Republicans alike, not one did find them funny. So maybe the apology route, could be the route to go for him. But how do you think Republicans recapture that excitement and that enthusiasm that they saw and were really riding high from the RNC? How do they recapture that between now and November?
That's a great question. I think something that the Trump campaign needs to do, that Democrats have been really good about doing over this last week or so, is mounting an aggressive swing state campaign. We haven't really seen that coming out of the Trump camp recently. He's been doing press conferences at Mar-a-Lago or, some of his real estate properties. I think really hitting those swing states is going to be crucial, especially when he's right now down in the majority of them by a few points. I mean, it's 2.5 months away. So much can still happen. And, if he's able to go out there and meet the people, I'm sure that it will have an effect in the polls, probably in a positive direction. But knowing him and his tangents, who knows? So maybe there's a reason behind not doing the swing states right now.
We're only a few months out from Election Day, but a lot can obviously happen because a lot has already happened in just this past month. Brittany Martinez, I hope as the election continues onward, you come back and join me again soon. Thanks for the conversation.
Thank you, Brittany. From Brittany to Brittany, thank you for having me.